Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to What's in My Head podcast. Today I'm joined by Mr. Phil Roman. You'll know the name, the Grinch, Garfield, Charlie Brown, and Underdog and so much more stuff. We'll get to that. Phil, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, thank you.
No problem, man. I'm really, like I told you before, man, I'm really excited. I'm really happy you decided to do this. Taking a step back, I don't want to go too deep with you because I feel like with your career and how vast your career has been, we could probably do, I don't know, 30, 40 straight hours of just, what Phil did back in the day. I mean, you've touched some amazing IPs and projects back in the day. One in particular that a lot of fans had written in about and wanted to know about, mainly Charlie Brown, and the other one was the Grinch. What do you remember from, we'll start with the Grinch, but what do you remember from working on the Grinch?
Well, I had the great fortune of working with one of my heroes. I had always wanted to work with him. I'd worked at Disney's and other places, and the guys at Warner Brothers had this, Frizz and Chuck and the other guys had this way of telling stories that were funny, and the poses and everything. And I had been animating in some other studios. And I was working with Benny Washam at a studio called Ray Patton Productions. And one day he comes in and he says, I'm going to be going to work with Chuck Jones. I said, oh, you're going back to Warner Brothers? He says, no. He says, Chuck Jones is now going to be working at and I said, oh God, I'd love to work with you. That'd be a great opportunity. And because Benny and I were the only animators there at that studio, and just doing commercials. And so he left. And the next week he calls me up. He says, there are no animation openings. Chuck has his old group back with him. He said, but there's one assistant job open. Would you like it? I said, take it. So I, just to get in the door, I wanted to be working with Chuck. And I'm giving you the long version of actually being there and getting to know him. And so I went in as an assistant. And again, working with Ken Harris and Benny and all of Chuck's animators, Ken Dick Thompson and Tom Ray, and so it was up in a tower there in Sunset and Vine in Hollywood, and so it was very. And then I asked Benny a couple of months later, 2 or 3 months later, I said, "Is there anything I can animate?" And he says, sure, because what Chuck would do, I never picked up work directly from Chuck. It was always through Benny. Chuck would time it out and everything, and then give it to Benny to hand out to the animators, and then he'd go out to the next project. And so Benny had a stack of drawings on his desk there. He says, "Here, why don't you take these at Animator?" Because he knew I could animate. And so I took my room, and I just myself, I animated and cleaned it up in betweens and everything. And then after about a week, a little over a week, I put them in there to give them to Benny to send out to pencil test. And so the next day, Benny comes in and says, "The pencil tests are here. You want to see?" I'm standing there by the moviola. And Chuck says, "Stop." And then he turns around and says, "Who animated this?" And I said, "I did, Chuck." So he turns around and looks at me. He says, "You're an animator. You're not an assistant." And he promoted me right on the spot to an animator. And I gotta tell you, what I felt to be one of Chuck's animators, And anyway, so for a while, I did my own animation and in-betweens, cleanup and in-betweens. And so anyway, and then one day he called all the animators into his office, and he says, this is a picture we're going to be doing. It's a special, and I'm going to walk this through the whole picture, and through the Grinch. And so he actually, told us the story and the kind of animation he wanted, and how the type of attitudes and things that he had planned, and the pacing and all of that. He just went through the whole thing, and so then again. He gave all this after he had what he did. He would pose, do the exposure sheets, and do all the poses, the main poses in each scene, and which is the way I used to do when I was directing. But anyway, so then when he was done, then a few weeks later, then he gave it to Benny. So Benny started handing out scenes. So from the very beginning, there was a variety of stuff. Like I got involved in some of the decoration inside the house, and putting up the decorations on the ceilings, and there's a guy that comes out of a box and puts a star on the tree, and a lot of the miscellaneous little things like that. And other scenes I animated were like the Cindy Lou Who. That series of scenes. I always used to kid June Foray that she came in and for a recording session and just said, "Why, Santa Claus, why?" And took 15 minutes, and I worked on those scenes, for about 3 or 4 weeks. But she took it in good graces. But anyway, so there were some a variety of scenes. I could tell you which scenes Ken Harris animated, Benny Washam animated, and stuff like that. But anyway, it was it was a fun occasion, because the book was one way, and what Chuck had done, he had plus the characters. He had given them the Chuck look, and to me that brought the characters more to life, especially the Grinch, because he was in the book. He's just kind of a gray character, but the story you could read maybe in 5 minutes, but working with the musician and the music, to me, it's just a classic with Boris Karloff, and the music and the storytelling, and it just was a lot of fun to work with. And so we saw it, and we're all real happy. Then, as happens with every project, we go on to the next project. That one went out, and so then we do the next Tom and Jerry or whatever it was, and then it came on the air, and the reaction to it was just amazing, very gratifying, that the public really had been taken in by this energy and this. It's to me, it's a movie about redemption, about somebody who sees a light, and it's a real Christmas story. Even though Dr. Seuss was not that religious, I don't think, it was a classic Christmas story, and it fit the occasion. And so then all of a sudden it becomes a classic. Everybody wants to see it every year, and they're still talking about it, along with the Charlie Brown Christmas and some of those other things that are perennials, And somebody else asked me, what does it take to make a classic cartoon like that? If I knew, I patent the thing and everything I'd work on would be a classic, but that's just a magical mix of different elements. And it had a great character. It had a great story, and it had a great storyteller that was Chuck Jones, And then the music, and just the performance of Boris Karloff. You know, I can't imagine anybody else being at that post, you know. But anyway, it was a very, very pleasant experience, and I'm still enjoying it. Although when we made that, I think there were like 6 minutes of commercials in it, and later on, you know, they made it to 8 minutes of commercials. So they had to take out trim some of the story, and so they took out some of the stories and the credits at the end. So if you notice, NBC this year there were no credits.
That's That's crazy. That's one thing that I wish more people would look at. And that's the whole reason I started this podcast, is because we know the story of the Grinch. We know the story of Tom and Jerry, but very rarely do we get to know or see or even hear people like yourself that, you know, wait till the end of the movie to see their name up on that big screen. Because you guys, like you said earlier, you know, what took you 3 to 4 weeks, June Foray came in there and knocked out in 15 minutes, you know. And a lot of people will remember June Foray. A lot of people remember the voice actors, but very rarely do people seek out the board artists, the animators, the writers, you know. So like I said, that's the whole reason for this show. And I appreciate you sharing that story with us. And one name that you brought up, well, there's a couple names that you brought up that I'd like to talk about. Boris Karloff being one of them. My favorite Universal monster of all time was Frankenstein. I used to watch that with my grandpa when I was younger, and I was scared. I was scared when I was younger. Seeing that big Frankenstein's monster come across the screen, and then just the villagers chasing him, I just remember being scared, but also in awe. And then I find out my favorite Universal monster is the narrator and also the voice of the Grinch many years later. Do you ever get the chance to meet or talk with Mr. Boris Karloff?
No, he never came into the studio. He just went to the recording studio. But from what I understand, he was a very gentle guy. You know, just the opposite of the roles that he played. You know, he was a very learned gentleman. You know, and but he could play the part. I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, there was something about that Grinch character that just you see the animation, you know, you got to have everything, like you were saying. You got to have good script, you got to have great characters, you got to have great voice actors, you got to have music and stuff like that. This is a masterpiece, is what I'm getting at. I'm throwing out all of these words. The Grinch is a masterpiece, and he just took it to a whole nother level. I mean, his voice, his cadence, you know, just everything about him just oozed the Grinch. You know, it really felt like you were in the movie with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chuck was a director of that voice session, you know, so he knew what he wanted, and so he brought all those elements out of the character. And so, which made, to me, Chuck was a genius. You know, he was one of these guys who, a creator. Everything. He had a great sense of humor. He had a great sense of. He was very, very well read, and quoting all kinds of. Literature and music and stuff, and so like in the Warner Brothers cartoons, you know, all those are based on literature and music, you know, like kill the wabbit. There's just fun, you know. They're just taken to an extreme, and it's great storytelling and great animation, you know. And to me, that's why I got into the business, because I wanted to make drawings move, you know, animation, you know, it's an animation business, and it's the animation that brings the characters to life, and that's what drew me into it.
Now, I'm glad we were talking a little bit about Chuck, because I've had a few people on here that have gotten to work with Chuck, and I just finished reading Chuck's biography. I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure it's the autobiography, because it sounded like any interview I've ever heard of him, it sounded exactly like I was reading, but it was called Chuck-a-Muck. I'm pretty sure you've read it too. Just a phenomenal book. And it's funny, just in his early days, and for the life of me right now, I cannot remember his cat's name, but he was talking about the cat that would just go crazy for the grapefruit. And you could see that got him that initial spark of just drawing and stuff like that, just seeing how things were animated. And then you see those early drawings of that cat he was talking about, and you see that smile, or you see that Chuck Jones style, and then you see the Grinch, and it just, like I said, it just oozes Chuck Jones. Before we get off the Grinch, there was a couple questions I want to ask. What was your favorite scene that you got to work on the Grinch? Do you have one?
Well, like the Cindy Lou's Who scene was fun, you know. Like I said, that part took me about 3 weeks or so to do, and then at the very end, where after the Grinch has stolen all the gifts and gone up to the top of the mountain, and he's hanging up there, and with everything, then he looks on the Whoville and sees everybody coming out to celebrate Christmas, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what gets his moment of
Redemption.
redemption, absolutely. And so I animated those scenes there where he's up in the mountain and he's looking down and brings the dog over. This still came out, you know. Then he turns around and goes back. But there were several sequences, you know, that I animated, but some are scattered here, some are there. But it was fun because the different challenges, and you know, animating the Grinch when he's mean and kind of evil, to when he changes heart, you know, and he realizes that Christmas is worth celebrating, and so you know, that to me is what animation is all about, bringing these characters to life, and everybody relates to them, you know. And anyway, that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, like I said, this is a movie we watch every year, and we'll watch it. I mean, if we're being completely honest, Phil, and I probably shouldn't say this, we watch it when it's not Christmas time, because it's like I said, it's a masterpiece. It's a fun watch. Whenever I'm feeling down, you know, there's a few things that I know I can go to the well and I can pop in, and that might be, you know, top 5 for sure. If I'm having a bad day, if it's July, or if it's even February, man, I'm popping in the Grinch and I'm gonna laugh and I'm gonna have a good time, because it's, like I said, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
With that being said, you know, we talked about your favorite scenes and, you know, all the players and the movers and the shakers for this.
Another scene that was taken out, that was one of my favorites, was when there's everybody sitting at a table, and the Who's come out with a plate of and then he stops and takes the top off, and another Who comes out, and then so that takes it to the table, takes another Who comes out and takes an apple to Cindy Lou Who, you know. And but that was taken out because I guess they felt that didn't further the story, you know. But anyway, that was a fun little scene that was great to do.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one too, because it was, I can't remember how many times they did it. It might have followed the rule of 3. It might have done it 3 times. But I remember being a little kid and I'm like, man, what's gonna happen here? And then they open it up and then Cindy Lou Who gets the apple. And I'm like, oh, that was so cool, man. So it was just all these little things. It sparked my imagination at such a young age. You know, all of these shows that you worked on did.
Yeah, and that wasn't in the book, you know. That's something that Chuck added, you know, and so little bits of business.
I'm pretty sure it's been talked about or it's out there, but was there a reason that he chose the color green for the Grinch? I'm assuming just holiday colors, Christmas colors, or?
I don't know, because I noticed at Warner Brothers, there was a witch that, like in the forest, and Hansel and Gretel got lost, and she was green. So maybe he just got into a habit of painting villains green. I don't know. Yeah. We never talked about it. I just assumed that because it looks natural, you know.
Yeah. So
I like the green better than the gray in the book, you know. But my least favorite color is gray. So
green's my favorite color of all time. So I really enjoyed the Grinch being green. You said that you got to work with your hero in Chuck Jones, man. I got to imagine that during his career and during your career, it probably and for sure crossed paths a lot. But do you have a favorite memory of you know, just hanging out with Chuck, or whenever you hear the name Chuck Jones, it comes to your mind? But do you have a favorite memory of Chuck?
Oh yeah, no, because he used to take some of us out for lunch, you know. So we'd And I got to tell you, to be with his group with Ken Harris, which is probably one of the top animators in the business, and for him to consider me equal to Ken and Benny and all his old standbys, I mean, it was just tremendously gratifying to feel that I just felt I made it, But I started out doing, I'm one of Chuck's animators, and that to me is the acceptance. And many years later, I'd already gone, and I was working at Melinda's, Charlie Brown, and so I was thinking back about Chuck and everything, and he still had a studio up in the tower there in Sunset Vine. So I bought a nice bottle of scotch, and I wrote him a nice letter thanking him for all that he had done for me. And so I took it up to him, and he was very nice. Then a few days later, I received a very nice note from him. I mean, he wrote in this very nice style. He had a very nice oral style, very, very nice. Thanking me that he was thanking me for helping him on his project. But I just felt so fortunate that he that for what he had done personally for me, not because I worked with other big animators. I worked with Frizz and Bill and a lot of other people, but Chuck just kind of stands out, for his personal touch, and that he took, I don't know if he took an interest in me or not, but he accepted me. and Ken Harris to me and Benny Washer were, I mean, what they could animate was just beautiful, just beautiful stuff. And Ken Harris, like, he would draw as if he's writing a letter, like he put the pencil down and just kind of starts drawing, and so and then it's very fluid, when you see it on the screen. And Benny could do the beautiful little expression stuff, detailed, funny stuff, and so anyway, that was one of the highlights of my career.
I got to imagine, man, and they always say don't meet your heroes because they can never live up to your expectations. But it seems like Chuck Jones surpassed every expectation you had as him being your hero, and then some.
Yeah, because I not only was an employee, but he just I asked him to sign my after I had enough credits to join the Motion Picture Academy. I asked him if he would sign the card, as one of my sponsors. I needed 2 sponsors, and Natalie says, "Of course." He says, "Just a minute before you go here, Ken." So he wrote out a note. He says, "Give this to when you include this with your application when you mail it to the Academy." And so I after I left, I read it. I said, "Oh my God, he's building me up as if So I just felt so thing, and I'm sure because of his personal involvement, I got accepted into the Academy. This is 1967.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, a lot of great memories with Chuck.
Well, thank you for sharing some of those with me. I really appreciate it. This is one of my favorite parts of the show, is I get to see through your eyes, or whoever I have on, I get to see through you guys' eyes what it was like back then. Because I didn't tell you, but it's been out there on the podcast a few times that I wanted to be an animator when I was younger. I could see something when I was real young, and I could draw real well. I had a hard time creating and coming up with stuff, but I could see something. I go, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And it wasn't until 6, 7 years old. I live out here in Orlando, and my dad took me to Universal Studios, and this is before they moved all the animation over to the West Coast. And they were working on SpongeBob SquarePants at the time. It wasn't out yet, but they were starting to, like, bump up the publicity and stuff like that. So when we're going through the gate, they're handing out tickets. They say, hey, we're getting ready to roll out this new show in the next year or so, and we want people to know about it. So I got to go in there, and then I got to look down. I remember it being on the second floor, and got to look down into like the artist alley, or just where all of the artists were at. And there was one lone artist over in the corner, and he had his drawn on his table and stuff like that. And he kept tearing down the picture, and he kept balling it up and throwing it over his shoulder. And then I just happened to look down, and then he had a stack, just balled up paper. It looked like a mountain, right? The same mountain the Grinch lived on. It looked like a mountain of just balled up paper. And I remember asking the lady, like I said, I'm 6 or 7 years old. I'm like, hey, why is that artist over there? Why is he throwing those away? Those look really, really good. And I remember her telling me that, if it's not on spec, or if it's not on the model, if it's not specifically the way it's intended to be, they have to start over. And I was like, wow. I was like, my mom would have hung that picture up on the refrigerator, and she said I would have done a good job. And that day, right then and there, I knew I would never be an animator, because it's just, you got to throw away so much. I can't remember who said it, but somebody was like, you've got 1,000 or 10,000 bad drawings in you, right? So it's the same thing with anything. You got 10,000 bad whatever it is, so get them out of your system as quickly as possible. But so I found out, like I said, real young, that I wouldn't be an animator. Another topic that you brought up, and I absolutely love, I don't know if you'll be able to see him, but I got Snoopy and Woodstock on one hand, and then I got old Charlie Brown on my other hand. I'm a huge Peanuts fan. This is my favorite comic strip when I was growing up. I loved Garfield as well, but the Peanuts took it, and it was because of Snoopy and Woodstock. Those were my favorite characters from that. How did you get? I'm just gonna keep it real vague. How did you get on board to start helping out with all of the Peanut specials?
Okay, after I left Chuck Jones, then that studio closed around the end of 1969, and and from there I went and did a Uncle Sam Magoo at UPA with Abe Levitot, who was a director at Chuck's, and then after that I went to Friz Freeling, Patty Freeling, to work on because Chuck was supposed to do 3 Dr. Seuss, and he only did 2. He did the Grinch and Horton Hears a Who, and he was supposed to do the Cat in the Hat, and so it went. Chuck suggested that it go to Patty Freeling because Holly Pratt was there, and he wanted Holly to direct it. And so they took that last special. I'm the only one that worked on all 3 specials, and so after I worked with Friz, and then I worked on another project called Curiosity Shop. And after that, I had already met Bill, and I had done some freelance work for him, and he seemed to like what I was doing. But anyway, after I needed a steady job, so I called him up. And he said, yeah, come on down, Phil. And because he knew I could animate already, because I had done some stuff on He's Your Dog, Charlie Brown. And so anyway, he had like 3 houses on Larchmont Avenue that were side by side. And one was with the layout and Bill's office, and so they put me in there in the back, gave me a little desk, and then the other room was editing, and the ink and paint were in the third one, and so they had animators in the second one, and anyway, so now Bill again was one of my heroes growing up, because his name was Melendez. He was I'm Mexican American, and here's a Mexican American on the screen getting screen credit. So thinking, hey, maybe I have a chance here too, you know. So he was one of my heroes that, and he was a terrific artist, you know, and he was the only person that Charles Schultz listened to creatively.
Mhm.
Everybody would say, hey, Sparky, you know, how about a gag here? How about a gag there? He said, yeah, that's nice, and just ignore him, you know. But Bill, you know, he worked very, very closely with him on the stories, on the storyboards, and the direction. And I'm working there with Bill, and he had some old-time animators. He had Frankie Smith from UPA, and Rudy Samora, who had been in the business since the 1930s, 29. I think I've seen a credit for him, 1929. And so he'd been around a while, you know. And so some of those guys were in the other room. So one day he comes into my room, and he's got a big stack of exposure sheets and drawings and storyboards. He says, Phil, this I'm going to be real busy. Can you finish directing this picture? And I said, sure. I'm not going to say no. And it was the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. He had gone to do halfway, and then he gave it to me, and so I just looked at what he had done, you know. So I kind of followed. He had doing bar sheets, you know, time everything on bar sheets, and then go from the bar sheets to the exposure sheets, and you make poses for every scene, you know, and they go to the sheets and anything. So I just followed his setup, and so anyway, I guess they were real happy. They were content because after that I became the director on the Charlie Browns, and Bill was just kind of running the studio and doing business and bringing in other projects. But anyway, that was another thing of acceptance, you know. Another hero of mine has accepted me, you know, for to direct, you know, and I guess I did everything right, because I directed 14 specials there when I was there with Bill, and the thing is that to bring it full circle, you know, that's was with Charles Schultz. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, you know, I come from Fresno, California, which is a very central California. It's agricultural, and you know, my parents came from Mexico, and so I was born during the Depression. And then when I was about 12, 13, I saw Bambi, and I wanted to be an animator. Anyway, then I started buying books on how to draw and this and that. And one thing I did was I got a correspondence course, mm-hmm. How to draw, because there were no art schools in Fresno. There was no place to really learn drawing and cartooning, especially because I wanted to be a cartoonist. And so I sent enrolled in a correspondence course, and my teacher was a fellow named Sparky, Charles Schultz. And so I still have a letter from Sparky correcting my drawings, you know, going through and I gave Jeannie Schultz's widow a copy of it for the museum in Santa Rosa. But anyway, to find out that later, I'm just a kid. Later, here I am working on his characters. One of the world's most famous cartoon characters, Snoopy and Charlie Brown, and so I told him one day. I says, you know, Sparky, you know, I appreciate you were my teacher, and there weren't any art schools in Fresno at the time. And so he says, well, that's the reason we had the school for people just like you that weren't uh, exposed to any art drawing, art teaching. So anyway, so that was another connection with Charlie Brown, but that just come all the way around, to not only be as a student, but also working on his characters. And I found it very, very rewarding. He was just a very, very fine man.
Yeah, I've had the honor of having the curator for the Charles Schulz Museum on, Benjamin. His episode was out 5 or 6 episodes ago, and hearing some of the stories I got to hear, because like I said, I've been a fan of yours. I've been a fan of Charles Schulz. I've been a fan of Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, Bill and Joe, Hanna-Barbera, just all of these titans in the industry.
They're the ones that created the business,
Yes, they are, and a lot of the fans that listen and watch this show,
Mhm.
they don't know yourself. They don't know the Chuck Joneses. All they know is what they've consumed over the last 10 to 15 years. And like I said, that was the huge part of doing this podcast, is taking those names in the credits, people that laid the foundation for animation. A lot of those folks are gone now, unfortunately, because, it's just Father Time is unbeaten, right? So
Yeah.
it's you guys have had some of the greatest stories told, but a lot of those stories have left when they've left us. So like I said, this is the whole reason for doing this, is because you're yourself. I've heard so many stories here just in the last 45 minutes alone that we've been chatting that I've never gotten to really see or really hear anywhere else. So I appreciate you sharing and opening up with me, because a lot of people are very guarded with their memories. A lot of people are very guarded with I don't want to say the industry secrets or the industry in itself, but very rarely do people get to open up and I get to hear a lot of the stuff. And like I said, once I started this podcast and I get to hear all of this, it's very enlightening. And like I said, it's crazy to see where it started and where it's at now. And you yourself, like I said, was a pillar of that foundation. So hats off to you, Phil, man. We really appreciate you.
Well, I'm in the next generation for Chuck and Bill and Frizz and all those guys, because like every 20 years or so, there's a change. So almost everybody in the business, like when I started Disney's and everybody, they were all like 20 years, 25 years older than me, And so all those guys are gone, and now my generation's kind of also gone. Just very few of the guys that I came into the business with are still kicking.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys are here. So
I can bore you with my stories.
I promise you, there's no such thing. I've went, and I won't keep you as long as I've had the longest interviews, but I've had, first off, man, I would love to do a part 2 with you, because I got to imagine you've got some stories. And as soon as we're done with this call, because it happens every time I have somebody on, they're like, damn it, I should have said that story. I was remembering it. So, because whenever the creative juices start going, you probably haven't thought about a lot of this stuff in, quite some time. And then you start thinking about it now, you're like, oh man, we should have talked about this. We should have talked about that. So if you would like to, man, because I'm having fun and I hope you are too, I'd love to have you on for a part 2 down the road if you're up for it.
Sure.
Beautiful. Oh man, I'll make sure it's early enough.
Yeah.
One more thing before we get to the fans' questions, and you had some fans' questions. A lot of them are really good. You brought up something. You're Mexican American, so you're first generation American. One thing I absolutely love. I'm a chef by trade, so that's my day job. I go in there, I cook, and I get to do this for fun. I absolutely love not only Mexican culture, but Mexican cuisine. It goes Southern food for me because it's just what I grew up on. Fried chicken is my favorite thing in the world to eat. But very, very close to that Southern cuisine is the Mexican cuisine. And I absolutely love Mexican food. It's probably my number one glutton for punishment. I'll go into any Mexican spot that's out here by us, and I'm dropping 30, 40 bones on the table, and I'm eating everything in sight. So my question really is what is your favorite dish from your family? Do you have one?
Well, my mother was a tremendous cook, and with, but I don't know, she just make everything that she's, and she loved us. She made gangbusters, tamales,
That's my favorite.
and somehow the flavors have changed, through the years, and so I've eaten a lot of Mexican food, but somehow it doesn't connect with my mother and my grandmother.
Yeah.
They were tremendous cooks, and I don't know. There's all kinds of dishes. I mean, I just I don't know whether the chiles rellenos. I think I overate some one time with my grandmother. I just kept eating, but anyway, it's just a lot of memories, and I think like with a lot of the old families from other countries, Italy, and other countries, the main meeting place is in the kitchen.
Yes.
And over dinner, and telling stories and talking about the old families and where they came from and what your history is, that kind of stuff. And it's that kind of ties you to where they came from that you've never been there, but and who you are,
Yeah.
and who you really are. And so that's it was always a good tradition. My grandmother lived right next door to us, and so I was a little kid, and so my grandmother, I was the oldest, so my grandmother just spoiled me, and I admit. And so anyway, it's food is was the connecting thing with the families who brings everybody together.
It really is, man. It's built civilizations. We've literally broke bread and built civilizations.
Absolutely.
And one thing I want to echo before we get to the fans' questions is it was like that in my household too. My granny, she was on my dad's side, so she was the one that instilled my love of food. Without her, there's a story that goes around when I was younger. I did not like milk. I didn't like the formula. I didn't like breast milk. I didn't like any of it. So my granny would watch me when my mom and dad would go to work. And she would notice that I wouldn't drink the milk that my mom put into the little sippy cup and stuff. So she would wait until my mom left and my dad left, and then she would dump it out, and then she would put sweet tea into it. So that's what Granny, because that's how Granny got me to drink. And then every morning we would make my grandpa biscuits. So my grandpa was a farmer. He would get up in the morning at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would go and work out in the field. And then my granny would get up with him, and she'd make biscuits every morning, sausage gravy, eggs, hash browns, all that good Southern breakfast that makes you feel like crap by the end of the day. That's what we were eating every morning. So that definitely was instilled in me by her, just remember where we came from.
Thank God for grandmothers.
Yes, can't agree more. So we're going to rotate into the fans' questions. Like I said, thank you for sharing the stories. Like I said, we couldn't cover 100th of what you've done in just a short hour. So I'm excited to have you back on for a second part. But our first question comes from Cameron. He's been writing in steadily, probably since the first couple episodes, and he's always got some pretty insightful questions. Out of all the projects that you've been involved with, what was the most satisfying for you?
Most satisfying. Every project has its own feel, its own appeal, its own memories.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, a lot. I get asked this question. Usually, they say, "What's the favorite character you ever worked on?" And I'll say, it's like asking a parent, who's your favorite kid? And I say, but if I had to choose, I would say it's Garfield.
Garfield?
Because Garfield, when I was at Bill Melinda's, I directed the first two Garfields there, and Garfield, Here Comes Garfield, and Garfield on the Town.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, I finished that. Then I thought to myself, here I am, 52 years old, and I've accomplished almost everything I wanted to do. I've animated, I worked at Disney's, I worked with some of my favorite animators, directors, and I've directed, I've done everything I set to do except one thing, have my own studio. And in 12 or 13 years, I'm going to be 65, and probably retiring. And I'll look back and I'll say, you didn't even try. I says, I would hate to get to that point and look back and not try. I would rather attempt and fail than not even try at all.
Mhm.
So I quit. So I left Film and Linus like at the end of 1983. And so they threw a big going away party, and Bill told Lee Mendelsohn, who was his partner, he said that I was leaving. So a couple of days before I left, Lee came into the studio and said, "How would you like to do the Garfields?" I said, "Yeah, but Bill's doing them, you know." He said, "No, Sparky doesn't want Bill to do them, you know, he's not very happy." He says, "But if you want to do them, you know, you can, I would like for you to do them." He says, I said, "Yeah, I mean, I'd love it." And so he says, "Well," I said, "I'm going to be going on vacation after this for about a month." And he says, "Well, take your vacation. And when I'll talk to the syndicate, I'll talk to Jim Davis, I'll talk to the network and get their approval. And we'll go from there. So call me when you get back." So I left. And this was in October of, late October of 83. And when I came back, I called him. I said, "Yeah, everybody's approved, you know, go find a place, work out a budget, and so you'll be working on Garfield." So I tell people that Garfield is my favorite because he is the one responsible for opening this me as a studio, you know, having my own the Roman Empire, so to speak, and so I have a lot of fun memories doing those Garfield specials. Just me, you know, timing them out and recording and doing everything, and doing one or two a year, and just very quietly. And so I would say Garfield for that reason. It's very it opened up a big open for like a create my own studio. Like the first Garfield I did was with just myself and a secretary and an assistant, and everything else was freelance. So later on, by the time in 1996, I had over 500 employees doing about 10 different projects in one year. So we had grown, we had been accepted.
That's cool, man. It's always cool to see where that beginning started, you know, and
Yeah.
fast forward, you get to see 500 employees underneath you and then all these other projects. I bet you it's got to feel pretty good, you know, when you were laying your head down.
It's very satisfying, especially, you know, we did some other things. You know, we did the Tom and Jerry the movie, we did the Simpsons, the Critic, the Felix the Cat, the Mask, you know, a whole bunch of other things. It just created some new shows, you know, Bobby's World, Seabear and Jamal, and so we were accepted all over the world. You know, they've seen our characters.
Beautiful. Next one was, do you have a favorite? Zachary wants to know, what was your favorite Peanut special you worked on? Do you have one that sticks out the most?
There's, I think, I mean, it was, I worked on 3 features and like 14 half hours. But there's one segment of Charlie, she's a good skate, Charlie Brown.
Mhm.
And where Peppermint Patty is an ice skater. She was going to perform, and the thing is that she had to perform a real sequence, a real
ice skating routine. Yeah.
And so what they did, what we did, we shot Charles Schultz's daughter, I think it was Amy, and at his rink. You know, he's got a rink up in Santa Rosa, and so shot her, and did some rotoscope, and using that as a basis. I mean, you can't really do it as a rotoscope because, you know, Peppermint Patty's legs are about that big and a human. So just using that as a guide, movements and stuff, and planning the action and the skating and the movement, and that took a real I don't know. I had fun doing it and planning the camera moves and everything, and doing the poses for the. And then I got Bill Littlejohn, who was one of the best animators out there freelancing, to animate it, and the thing is that it was the setting it up is Snoopy was supposed to be playing the music behind what she's dancing, and so Snoopy messes it up because the tape goes all over the place, and so she's standing there waiting for the music to start. So then the music starts, but it's Woodstock whistling the tune is Puccini's O mio bambino caro, Puccini, and so she goes into it, and so anyway, so Bill Littlejohn, like I said, he animated it, and it came out perfect. You know, it's just an actual routine, you know, a skater routine, and all the planning and everything. I just felt very, very happy that, you know, we didn't have any retakes or anything like that, but the camera moves and the spinning and all just interpretation from the actual film, you know, worked perfectly. And so anyway, I take a lot of pleasure in that.
Yeah. Sean Cashman, I don't know if you remember him, but he's an animator.
Yeah, he worked over at Film One.
Yeah, so I had a feeling that you might remember him. I had him on a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so he didn't have a question, but he wanted to tell you this. I worked at your studio when I was on The Simpsons and King of the Hill. Nice man! ! So you really left an impression on Sean. Where are we at here? Oh, I lost my place. Oh, here we are. Frankie. Oh no, you did that one already. So, Antonio Alves wants to know: in your opinion, are Disney wages still too low?
I know what you're referring to.
Yes.
You know, I started at Disney's. How much time you have? Because I could get carried away.
Oh no, I got all the time in the world for you.
Okay, well, you know, I was going to art school in Hollywood. After I left the service, I go in the GI Bill, and I went to art center school. And one day I heard a couple of guys talking that Disney's was hiring, and so I called Disney's, and they said, yeah, bring your portfolio and we'll take a look at it. So I got to get the open and made an appointment to see Andy Youngman, and went there, and so he looked at them and everything was fine. You know, he says, fine, you know, if we need you, we'll call you. And so anyway, I'm walking out of the studio looking around, and gosh, you know, at least I've been on a lot, you know, just felt that certain energy there, just being there. And anyway, I think it was like on a Wednesday when I went there, and on a Friday, I was getting ready to go to Fresno to visit my folks, and I was putting stuff in my car when I heard the phone ringing inside the house. And so I ran and answered the phone, and it was Disney calling saying, can you start on Monday? Yeah, yes, of course. And so I go there, and it's what they did at that time is they were hiring 10 people at a time as apprentices, and so at 99 cents an hour,
Jeez.
and so and if you didn't make it out after the month, then they get you, or some people quit and everything. So then, but anyway, I sometimes when I'm speaking to people, I'll use that as, and I'll say, I think they're still paying that much, and but it's just a gentle little jab at Disney, because I loved working at Disney. I mean, it's the favorite studio I ever worked at, because it was just everything I imagined it to be. But the greatest animators, the greatest artists, the greatest everything you can imagine. And just walking down those hallways and feeling the talking energy and the wings and people at every different area. I mean, it was just so gratifying, and so. But I use that little thing of say, yeah, I think they're still paying that much, and it's a cheap joke, but again, people make fun of jokes about Studio Disney and everything, so it's not nothing negative, but just kind of my own little reaction to something that from my past. And one of the great things about working at Disney, I started in May, and on July of 1955, Disneyland opened, and so we were all, everyone in the studio was invited to go to the grand opening on a Sunday, and I still have the tickets, and I still have all the paraphernalia that came in the envelope, and I think I have the only real complete collection of everything that comes in, and even the parking ticket for 25 cents for the whole day.
That is so cool. That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And Antonio Alves, thank you for writing in, because he attached that with his question, he attached the acceptance speech. So I got a real big kick out of watching that.
Yeah. Nothing negative about it.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm just having fun with them.
Yeah, all tongue in cheek.
Yeah, but it's but because it's, like I say, it's my favorite studio I ever worked at.
I'm glad you got to work there. Josh Maldonado wants to know, what's it like to see your work cherished year after year? And he put in parentheses, the Grinch. So what's that like to sit there and see that so many people every year tune in to see something that you helped create?
Yeah, when you're working, when you're at the desk, it's just a job. They got these scenes, you animate it, and then it goes off. And the next picture comes in, you animate it, and you finished it, and it goes off. But then it takes a life of its own. It's broadcast. It's broadcast in this country. It's broadcast in Europe. It's broadcast in the Far East. And I tell people that when I used to travel, no matter where I went around what country I was in, I turn on the TV, and there's one show that I worked on, whether I animated on it, directed it, and produced it, but there's always something on there that I had worked on many years ago. And so that's a little extra bonus, I think, that not only it entertains American audiences, but it entertains people all over the world, and that to me is the greatest bonus that you don't plan it on, but part of the business model is that we're going to distribute it all over the world, or wherever we can sell it, and it's very very I don't know, like the Grinch. Just watching it again, and it just brings back memories. I remember working on that. I remember how I tried to time that, and I remember seeing Penny animated that. Ken Harris animated that. it just brings all these memories of watching the production in the works.
Yeah.
And Chuck making his comments and this and that, but it's it's an extra. You get your paycheck, but this is an extra kind of a bonus, an emotional bonus that you get for many years later that you were part of that team.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Amen.
All right, and here's the last one. It's from Devin Baxter, and you've mentioned some of these names before, but I'd be remiss not to explore it a little bit further. And Devin Baxter is, I'm pretty sure he's forgotten more about animation than I'll ever be able to retain. This man is very, very knowledgeable. But he was like, I would love to know more about your interactions with Ken Harris, Ben Washman, Lloyd Vaughn, Abe Levital, and Dick Thompson. You got any cool stories about any of those guys?
Oh yeah, all those guys were great friends of mine.
Yeah.
I would like to say Benny was my first friend. I met him when I was working at on the King Leonardo show, and so we're doing that, and so that back when I was like 1960, I think it was, and so we remained friends. After that, we'd have lunch together, we'd go out for drinks together, and so he was my first connection to the old Chuck unit, but to me, just being in that group, Dick Thompson was a dear friend. Who we got together often. Ken Harris was a little bit more, I wouldn't say antisocial, but because he was good, but his drawings came out, funny. He could express himself in a funny way, but he wasn't a funny guy, and he was, and he was a very funny guy, and Dick was just your normal everyday kind of guy, and Abe Levital. He was a gentle giant. He was the big guy. I'm 6'3". He was about 6'5", and very imposing presence. And but such a talent. He could really draw. He had animated for Chuck before, and so he was when Chuck got very busy. He brought him in to direct the Tom and Jerry's, and then he also directed the Phantom Toll Booth. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, these guys are, they're real personalities that were friends. You actually went out to lunch with them and socialized with them, and they and I learned from them. Not that they didn't say, here's the way you do it, but just the way they thought, the way they, because we talked about that when we were together. How do you interpret certain actions? How do you do certain things? And so we just talked about it. And of course, it went to my brain. Yeah. And so anyway, in fact, Chuck at one point said, at 1936 or something like that, 37, he says, Phil, you're the youngest animator in the business. And I know I wasn't, because I'd worked with a lot of younger guys at other studios. But Chuck was using his interpretation of an animator. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the guys who were working on television stuff, they're very, limited animation stuff. But doing the kind of animation that Chuck did was just not your ordinary kind of. It had that kind of a personality and character to it. It was fun. It's just, let me tell you something. You cannot imagine the joy and the challenge of getting a Chuck Jones drawing on your desk and say, move it, animate it. I mean, that's a challenge. And you got to be stay up with Ken Harris and Benny Washam and Dick and all those other guys. I mean, that was a great challenge, and I love challenges.
Like I said, man, I really appreciate you spending some time with me tonight. You could have been doing anything else, man. You could have been eating some of that delicious Mexican food we were just talking about, tamales, maybe a little chilaquiles, a little chili rellenos, something like that. Maybe a little pozole because it is getting a little chilly. You know, you could have been doing any of that, but you
Yeah.
chose to talk to me. And Phil, man, I appreciate the hell out of you, man. Like I said, I've been a fan of yours since I was a real little boy, and I've got two little boys. I hope they're sleeping right now because the 12-year-old is sleeping, and then we got a 7-month-old. He better be sleeping. So,
Right.
but these kids and then their kids and their kids' kids are going to be raised on a lot of the stuff that you helped bring to life, man. I can't thank you enough for what you did. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. That's I didn't just show up at your door and said, "Here I am." Thank you for considering me.
Oh, anytime, man. Is there anything you'd like to tell the fans before we end the show? This is your time to tell them whatever you'd like to tell them.
No. It's just that I just feel very fortunate. You know, people talk about dreams and follow your dreams, and I feel very fortunate that I had my dreams as a little kid. You know, and the worst part of town, you know, where you can't imagine anybody there having a dream except besides existing to the next day. And the thing is that through focusing and hard work and perseverance, you know, you can make your dreams come true. And I always tell, you know, people when I speak, I said, you know, dreams do come true, even for a little Mexican kid from Fresno.
I don't know any better way to end it other than he's been Phil. I've been Julian. This has been the What's in My Head podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.
Thank you.